I want to start off today we're heading into a new series. It's our Advent series. There's a foundational verse we're going to be using. It will support everything we do each Sunday. So if you'd like to listen, or you can look toward it, it's in Joel, the second chapter of Joel. I'm going to be reading a few verses out of Joel 2:21, and then I'm going to skip over to a prophecy of vision. And you've heard this before, and it will make sense as we move through the worship and we move through the message today. Listen to this prophetic voice speaking out, telling of what's to come. Do not fear, O soil. Be glad and rejoice, for the Lord has done great things. Don't fear, you animals of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness are green. The trees bear its fruit. The fig tree and the vine give their full yield. Now I'm going to skip down to 26. You shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dwelt wondrously with you. And my people shall never again be put to shame. And you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am the Lord, and I am your God, and there is no other. And my people shall never again be put to shame. Then, afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions, even on the male and female slaves. In those days, I will pour out my spirit. May God bless the reading and the hearing of God's holy word. Some of you, if you read my newsletter article, that was sort of giving you a bit of a foretaste of what was to come today. But some in here are of the age. If you're kind of at my age, in that kind of 60-ish area, you will, if you are a very sophisticated rock and roll adult, meaning you grew up in those years, you'll remember the early 70s. It's a kind of progressive rock supergroup. They were called Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. Now, if you don't remember those guys, or you're too young to remember those guys, you've heard of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, you've heard of Mannheim Steamroller. Okay, all those things, they're copycats, really, of Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. If you listen to this music, it sounds very similar. They were just doing Emerson, Lake, and Palmer in this classic style, but it was rock and roll. They were doing old pieces, very old pieces of music. And if the hippies of the day had known it, they probably wouldn't listen to it. It was these very, I'm not going to say, well, they were classics. They were just classics. In fact, one of their most famous albums, Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, was called Pictures at an Exhibition. How many people ever owned that? It would have been an 8-track, by the way, or an album, right? It wasn't a CD, it wasn't a cassette, Pictures at an Exhibition, that's the album cover on the screen. See it opened up, and you go, wow, Pictures at an Exhibition. Look at these cool songs these guys did. Until you realize, if you dig back a little bit, they borrowed all of it. They used the work of Modest Migorsky as the basis for this album, Pictures at an Exhibition. The original Pictures at an Exhibition was a remembrance of Victor Hartmann. I know I'm throwing a lot of names around, don't worry about that. But it was a suite of 10 piano pieces. It was written in 1874. How you like that, rock and rollers of the 70s? You were only 100 years off when you thought Emerson, Lake, and Palmer were doing this great thing. And here's the deal. The musician wanted to create these pieces based on watercolors by, there they are. And if you want to know the names of the songs in the album, each of the songs of the album is named after one of the pictures. So the pictures represented sort of these classic images of Russia and the Russian people. And so Hartmann wanted to bring that to life, so he made watercolors. And they did an exhibition called Pictures at an Exhibition. So this Migorsky comes along and says, wow, look at those pictures. I think I could write music to each one of those pictures. And that's what he did. The hope was through the pictures, the sights, the sounds, the smells, and even in the music, the sounds come alive to create those images of those people of the day. Now, the whole Christmas season that we're fully into right now, we talked about this and stuff. It does something to us. I said, what is it? What happens to us during the Christmas time? What gets generated in us? And so I want to dig a little more deeply into what is the root of these feelings that you have when you walk into a place like the sanctuary and you see these sights, or somebody hands you a fir tree. What is brought to mind? What gets stored in us? Because I think there's some deep in us, some archetypal images that as soon as we identify them in real life, it brings to us thoughts and feelings. And you know what? It does it even to non-Christians. That's why I'm going to say it's something deep inside of us, because even non-Christians have a stirring, kind of like the way Hartman's watercolors stirred others. So this Advent, we're going to be exploring this, our own Christmas pictures at an exhibition, and you'll see I have them all displayed here. They're ready to go, and they'll be unveiled each Sunday, and you can try to guess. Don't worry, we lock these in a safe after worship. You can't come up here and look under the covers. It's, not allowed. So we're going to begin today. Are you ready for our first reveal? Say yes. Okay, first reveal. Here it is. Christmas pictures at an exhibition. Sorry if you're in the corner over there. So what is it? It's a Christmas tree. So now you know, when Elisa heard that I was going to do the first one was going to be a Christmas tree, she went out yesterday and bought this vest. That's the true story of the vest. If you look closely, it has Christmas trees all over it. Christmas tree. It's called the Tannenbaum or the telling tree. Did you know that? Have you put up your Christmas tree yet? Okay, truth be told, I bought one about 8 days ago. Sat in the backyard for about 8 days. You put it in the bucket of water, and I got busy. It's a busy time. We finally put it up. It is actually in the house, no decorations. So anyway, maybe later today we'll do that. I love fresh cut Christmas trees, and that's why I wanted to use the fir trees today, because I love that smell. I love the look of them. Just to walk in the house. Sometimes when you walk in the sanctuary, you can, when all the decorations up, you can smell that evergreen, and it's wonderful. But I'm not the only one that celebrates Christmas trees. We do this as a country in a couple of different ways. The first is, we have a national Christmas tree, and whoever the president is each year gets an opportunity to light the tree. So this year, we actually have a video of the national Christmas tree being lit. I thought we'd show that to you. That's one way to celebrate the lighting of the national Christmas tree. But some of us also have other ideas about what the real Christmas tree is supposed to look like. And maybe you've seen this movie.
There it is. Griswold family Christmas tree.
There it is. The Griswold family Christmas tree. So for me, Christmas trees have to be, as I said, they have to be real. It's one of those big conflicts in my marriage with Elisa, is that she grew up with an artificial tree. How many are artificial tree guys? How many real tree guys? So got to be a real tree for me. That's how it works. And there's some reasons for that, because growing up, part of those images that I carry within me is, as a child, getting out the ornaments, putting up watching my parents put up the tree, and then we put the ornaments on, and that whole idea of Christmas sort of launches out for me out of putting up the Christmas tree. But it's not just that. When I was about maybe 4 to 7 years old, my father was a part of the Lions Club, and the Lions Club had a Christmas tree lot. So every Christmas, I'd go out with my dad and supposedly help him sell Christmas trees. I don't know if I was a prop or what the deal was, but we would go and sell these Christmas trees. But it didn't stop there, because when I started in full-time ministry with Young Life, it's a nonprofit organization. We have to raise money, kind of like the Scouts are going to do tonight with their Eagle Project thing. So we would sell Christmas trees. So for the early part of Rachel and Kara's life, they never saw me for 2 weeks around Christmas or 3 weeks. I was at the Christmas tree lot selling trees. There it is. That's the actual lot. Sometimes we actually slept in the trailer. It was amazing. Came in one day and there was a bum sleeping in there. He had been selling the trees at discount, pocketing the money. True story. So I guess he needed the money. So I had somebody show up later and they said, "Where's that guy who was giving a great discounts on the trees?" Anyway, so this whole thing is kind of part of me. And I remember in that Christmas tree lot at night, I had lights strung up, and Rachel and Kara would run around, and it was kind of their magical Christmas forest, right? They're running all through the trees. So you see, what gets provoked in me when I see a tree is a lot. There's a lot stirring. But I'm going to suggest that this whole stirring with Christmas trees is in our blood, literally. The look, the smell. It's like there's something in us. It's hibernating deep within. And when we see the tree, not quite in the humorous way of the Griswold family Christmas tree, we see it as like a light shines from heaven, but there's something that gets triggered. Feelings start to arise. And sometimes we even sing songs like, "Oh, Christmas Tree," right? I first heard that song, "Oh, Christmas Tree," when I was a little kid, but I heard it by the German title because my dad would sing part of it. You know what the German title is? There you go. Gosh, you guys are so good. "Oh, Tannenbaum." But you don't know the words. Let me tell you the words. Literal translation from the German. Quite interesting, this song we've been singing. We don't quite know why it's fun to sing. It goes like this. "Oh, Tannenbaum" actually means fir tree. That's why I wanted to pass out fir trees to you today. So, oh, fir tree, much pleasure can you bring me? Oh, fir tree, your dress wants to teach me." Did you know that was part of O Tannenbaum? The hope and the stability give courage and energy for all time. The Tannenbaum, the fir tree, is strong. It doesn't turn brown. It has life. So it finishes like this. Oh, fir tree, your dress wants to teach me. So what does the Tannenbaum teach? That's what I want to get into a little bit today. Would you believe that some folks refuse to put up a Christmas tree because they think it's mistakenly a pagan custom, right? You go back to the whole pagan rituals, and it's inappropriate that Christians would do that. Others believe it was invented by Martin Luther, the German reformer, back in the 16th century, because he's walking outside one night, and he looks up at that clear, we sang in the song, to that clear starry sky, and he's so impressed with the majesty of God, he cuts down a fir tree, brings it in the house, and he puts candles on it, representing the stars. That's not where it came from. That's just a tradition. There's more, though, much more, to what gets triggered inside of us. And Father Francis Weiser, in his little book entitled Christmas Book, he gives a bit of a taste of what's going on. He says the origin of Christmas trees goes all the way back, get this, to the Garden of Eden. You go, don't remember reading that. It goes back to the Garden of Eden, represented by what? Fir tree. Interesting, isn't it? A fir tree hung with apples. It represented the tree of life, which stood in the center of paradise. Now you go, okay, are you making that up? trees are a very, very important archetypal image throughout the Bible, all the way from Genesis to Revelation. And that's what we're going to do today in the next 3 hours. Do you know the first living thing that was created? You know what it was? In the Bible, go back to Genesis. I'm not going to read it to you, I'll tell you. Vegetation and trees. That's the first, vegetation and trees. Kind of makes sense. And then here comes humankind. And with humankind, we get this story. We're introduced to the tree of knowledge of good and, for the first time, Genesis 2:9. And out of the ground the Lord God caused to grow every tree that is pleasing to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. How many trees? So, could have been a fir, we don't know. And then what happens? Adam and Eve, humankind, we make the giant mistake of moving away from God. Amongst the trees in the Garden of Eden, God placed the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. He told Adam and Eve that they may eat freely of every tree except what? The tree of knowledge. You can have it all, but that one simple rule, how'd that work out for them? They couldn't do it, right? You know the rest of the story. They choose their own will over God's will. And through that simple act, sin enters the world. It's just turning away from God. So when we read the story of Adam and Eve, and you look at that a little more deeply, you see God's putting some pictures on exhibition. There's actually something very important going on underneath the surface. As one writer puts it, this is a spiritual parable of two trees, hiding a mystery that promises to reveal something radical and awe-inspiring about human origins, both biological and spiritual. And I think there's some truth in that. It just seems right. This centrally located tree of life, easily acceptable to Adam and Eve, to humankind. Anywhere in the garden they could get to it, it's right there. However, they choose to move away from God, right? They break that intimate personal relationship. We've spoken of that many times. But it also comes by way of what? It comes by way of a tree. We become distant from the tree, meaning distant from God. Did you know that in Deuteronomy, if you're hung on a tree, the Hebrew people would say that you're cursed? Listen to this. This is Deuteronomy 21:22, but I'm going to give you the New Testament version in Galatians. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, here's the quote from Deuteronomy, everyone who hangs on a tree, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. What happens to Jesus? We have a tree, we move away. Now the tree becomes a symbol of death. Then there's some good things in the Old Testament about trees. Jacob's lying under a tree. He has a dream, a vision of God. God speaks to him. The tree there, if you dig into it, the place was called Luz. Luz was the word for almond tree. He's under the almond tree, and he has this vision. And he renames the place Bethel, house of God. Moses, there's a tree, right? A burning bush. God speaks out of it. In Micah tells us in Micah 4:1-4 that its peace is to sit under the tree of life. That's the place where peace happens. And then finally we come to Jesus and trees. Nathanael is seen by Jesus under a tree, and he confronts Jesus and he says, Rabbi, you're the Son of God. You're the King of Israel. And Jesus answered back, you believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You'll soon see greater things. Zacchaeus, where's he called down from? From a tree. Jesus curses a fig tree because it doesn't have fruit. He comes upon it, he's hungry, there's no fruit. He says, this is in Mark 11:12-25, may no one ever eat from you again. John 15, Jesus says, I'm the tree, I'm the vine, you're the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, you bear much fruit. But if you're not a part of me and connected like that, like a tree trunk is to the branches, you can do nothing. So in that verse itself, Jesus seems to be identifying himself as that tree of life. There it is again. He's the only source of life. And without being attached to him, there's only death. And finally, we end our tree exploration here. Jesus faces the curse, right, of being hung on the tree. He takes the curse of death in order to bring us to the tree of life. Now, if you put all that together, what we just talked about, I don't think it's an accident, and I put it to you. Is it an accident that the cross of Jesus Christ is referred to as a tree? Many of your translations will, rather than saying cross, they will actually translate the Greek there to tree. One example in 1 Peter 2:24. He himself carried our sins in his body to the tree so that we can be free from sin. We might live for righteousness. For by his stripes you have been healed. Now, I could go into stripes and candy canes, but that's another picture as an expedition, and the exhibition's not going to be today. So here we go. At the center of the gospel, we have this mysterious object known as the tree of life. There it is. At the beginning, we have Adam and Eve, free access due to disobedience. They want to go their own way. They're cut off from the tree. And here's what one writer says. The entire rest of the story, now he's talking about the Bible, the entire rest of the story is a chronicle of humankind's new Exodus journey out of the wilderness, are you with me? Sin, wilderness, back to the tree of life, which is finally shown planted at the center of the New Jerusalem. We started at Genesis. You ready for the Revelation? You thought I was kidding about Christmas trees and fir trees. Revelation 22:14 says, "Blessed are those who wash their robes, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter by the gates into the city." Interesting. First tree has to do with sin. Second tree has to do with righteousness. I don't know if you ever, when you look at a Christmas tree, I don't know that you know exactly what's getting stirred, but I hope I'm getting close to telling you why. The tree of knowledge of good and evil brought what? It brought the curse. The tree of life brings blessings. It brings healing and no more curse. We sing that Christmas hymn, the curse is gone, right? No more curse. Sin and brokenness has torn the human race apart, tears apart our intellect. It pulls on our emotions, and we just fall short. We just mess up, and we don't even know how to get along, even at this time of year. We can fight over gifts in a store, right? Black Friday. Sometimes we don't think the way we should. We think wrongly. We feel wrongly. And sometimes we choose wrongly too. So that means we need this healing. And that's exactly what this story and this picture represents. The tree of life restores. I'm not going to talk about healing properties. It would take too long. So between the events of Genesis, all those trees you heard in Genesis, and the trees of life at the end of the apocalypse, read them, look at chapter 21 and 22 in Revelation, read it through, look at those references to the tree of life being planted, the new Jerusalem. Some 6,000 or 7,000 years go by, right? From the beginning to the end. And between Moses' first writing and John's writing in the book of Revelation, 1,500 years go by. And the story remains the same, a consistent picture of a tree, of a fir tree, of a tree of life. So when you put up your tree or you go visit that, we visited, that's SeaWorld. They have a whole light show. We did that the other night, and I took that picture there at SeaWorld. When you see these Christmas trees now, when you smell them, I want you to think about what's being provoked, because I don't think it's only childhood memories. I'm suggesting to you that this picture Christmas picture at an exhibition is telling you something very deep about who we are, who God is, and what God chooses to do that we celebrate on Christmas Day. So the Christmas tree, you could consider it an Orthodox symbol of the theology of the incarnation, God becoming human being, flesh and blood. It also reminds us of the tree of life planted in paradise. We hear that in Revelation. It reminds us of Christ who comes to us as a little baby who himself is the fulfillment of that promise of that tree. It reminds us of Christ who by means of what? A tree grants us access to forgiveness for sin and leads us like an evergreen into eternal life. Wow, you've been attentive and we've gone late. The last thing I want to say is you thought a Christmas tree was just for putting Christmas presents under, right? Well, that's another picture on exhibition. And if you want to find out what those other two, you'll have to come back. Let's join together in prayer.